Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Water Guardian East to West. This is the second online event of the Listening to Water Symposium. We would like to begin by acknowledging that many of the people joining the call today are living on the unceded territory of Indigenous nations. Us at Talking Rivers are speaking from the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee people, specifically the Kanien'kehá Mohawk Nation. In addition, those of us who are part of this colonial society acknowledge our role as settlers on this territory, honoring those who have lived in harmony with this land since time immemorial. For this event, we would also like to thank water, the being that nourishes us, that keeps us alive and breathing. In this conversation, we will be speaking about water and how we can honor our responsibility to protect those that protect us.
In addition, we'd like to thank the Rwanda Diversity Initiative and all the individuals that made this event possible. This program was funded in part by Humanities New York with support from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities.
So the event tonight will be a conversation between people who are fighting to protect water. And our amazing panelists here tonight are Jack Fiander. Is a citizen of the Yakama Nation and a descendant of the Pembina Band of Chippewa Indians. He's an attorney who serves as the General Counsel for the Sauk-Suiattle Indian Tribe, where he works trying to right past historical wrongs and advocates for the rights of nature. Milo is a post-binary being and investigative poet with a fierce love for Great Salt Lake. As a queer anarchist, their rage burns hot. As a mediator, they know love is at the center, and their art originates from this place. Dr. Crystal Cavalier-Keck is a citizen of Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation, and she has dedicated the past 5+ years to defending her homelands against the Mountain Valley Pipeline Southgate Extension. She's leading a campaign to bring rights of nature laws to North Carolina to protect the waterways and communities in the pipeline's path. Then we have Chandler Rosenberg, who comes from the Great Basin watershed and the unceded lands of the Ute, the Paiute, the Goshute, and the Shoshone nations. She co-founded the Utah Food Coalition and Save Our Great Salt Lake, and serves on the board of Wasatch Community Gardens and the Mushroom Society of Utah. And raks, Quinney Goodleaf, is a Kanien'kehá and Nehiyaw, and was raised in Kahnawake. She works to share how humans can advocate, monitor, protect, and speak up for the waters.
And so now also introducing us. My name is Tinsun Aguilar Izzo.
I'm Blake Lavia.
And we are both with the organization Talking Rivers, and we will be the moderators for tonight. So, and before we begin the discussion proper, we'd like to invite the audience, you all, to drop your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. We'll be asking the questions at the very end of the event. And so to start, the first question we were posing to these amazing panelists is, what waters, rivers, streams, lakes sustain your community? How are they being threatened? And what are you doing to protect them? And the first person who will pass the word to will be Crystal. The word is yours.
Me Kanien'kehá, na hompi pise, mima Crystal, mima Occaneechi Saponi Watiwa. So the rivers and streams that are pretty sacred or sustain our community would be the Haw River, the Eno River, and the Roanoke River, just across the border in Virginia. And right now I'm focusing on fighting this pipeline called the MVP Southgate. And we are, we're coming up with strategies, not trying to give in to pressure, even though it was put in a political bill to fast track and virtually make it impossible to fight in court, is going against, constitutional things that we are able to fight against it, but we're not giving up hope. But here on the Haw River, which is one of the most vulnerable rivers in the state, it's very polluted and very toxic. And if you go a little bit further south into the Cape Fear River, most of the fish, you can only eat one fish, right? The Department of Environmental Quality suggests only eating one fish from that river in a year because it's highly toxic. And so we started with the Rights of Nature campaign. We've been doing it for about 2 years now, but going around and educating everybody about their what the water means to them, because a lot of people here don't really understand that they're on a creek or a tributary that flows into this river, and the water that they're getting, when you turn on your water, you think your water is clean. You really can't see the harmful things that are happening in it. And so we're just educating people about their water quality and the cancers that are coming, and just trying to educate people. In the meantime, we're going to politicians to help educate them as well, because these are the lawmakers that are making these decisions in government to either release or relax the regulatory actions that are happening in the committee, or the regulatory actions that happen in the state. And we can't have that, right? Like, you cannot loosen any more regulations, because if you do, industry is just going to pollute it more. We also see a lot of industry, when we confront them, they'll just close up shop and move south or move to another area. And we really don't want that either, because now you're polluting another community. We really want to hold the polluters accountable. So those are some ways that we're doing, but just making sure everybody understands that they are part of nature, right? Like, we're not above it. We are nature. And just trying to slow that down for people. And when people really see it, you can see it click in their minds that they are part of nature. And just trying to spread that good message with our relatives. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful answer. Now, passing the word on to Milo.
Thank you, Crystal. Yeah, so good to be here with everyone tonight, and so glad to be bringing Great Salt Lake. Yeah, what waters sustain our community here I'm in the Great Salt Lake watershed, which is actually the bed of an ancient sea, Lake Bonneville. Like a couple thousand years ago, this was like thousands of feet underwater. And now, like, that body of water has been growing and receding for millennia. And now we know that being as Great Salt Lake. So that's kind of like, I kind of think of Great Salt Lake as the heart of this bioregion and this valley. We're surrounded by the Ochre Mountains and the Wasatch Mountains, and the waters that flow out of the Wasatch are the 3 inlets. They're the only 3 rivers that flow into Great Salt Lake. And that's the Weber River, the Jordan River, and the Bear River. Those rivers are, Great Salt Lake is drying and is dying because too much water is being taken. Great Salt Lake is a terminal lake at the bottom of this big valley. And so water flows in and it has nowhere to go. That's what a terminal lake means. So the water that is flowing in is getting dammed. And in the late 1800s, white settlers arrived in this place and Within 100 years of them being here, there were countless dams, diversion projects, canals, all of this on these rivers. And we're seeing the effects of that now, and it's really stark, and it's happened in a really small period of time. And yeah, like Great Salt Lake, the heart of this region, it's the home of millions and millions of shorebirds make their way from on these migratory paths. And you can imagine this massive body of salt water. It's like the sea that they get to be at on this massive migration. And it's so special. It's so life sustaining. And it's drying up before our eyes, and it's horrifying. And there's a really simple solution. It's simple, and it's not easy, and it's getting more water to the lake. And this year we had this massive snow year. I think the lake might have had something to do with that. And they thought all the reservoirs, all these rivers are dammed, and all these reservoirs, they were worried they were going to overflow with this snow melt, all the snow melt. And so before the snow started melting, they released the dams. And what do you know? Like, Great Salt Lake is filling up, and things are getting green again, and it's looked like it hasn't looked in so long. And it really, like, it's turning that tap. It's opening those dams. It's deconstructing, right? Power companies own these dams to profit off the hoarding of water. Like, there's material action that can be made to get more water to this body. And yeah, it's extractive industry and industrial agriculture are these huge users of water in this valley. There are two companies, U.S. Magnesium and Compass Minerals, each individually use more water. They pump water out of the lake to get minerals out of it. And they each use more water than Salt Lake City, Ogden, and Provo, the three biggest cities in Utah. Those two companies use more water than those three cities combined every year. And the New York Times has headlines that say climate change and population growth are driving the drying of Great Salt Lake. And to not be naming these extractors as, just so much more egregious by like 7 times the amount of water use. Like, there are things that can really be done. Yeah. But I'm excited to talk about more in these spaces. Thanks.
Well, thank you for sharing the voice of Great Salt Lake. And now passing on the word to Kahté.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see 57 people here and coming together to talk about the water, to hold space for the water, to acknowledge the water, and I'm grateful to be here. And I'm sure even and those that are attending hold a lot of knowledge as well. So I live where I grew up is Kahnawake, which is right outside of Montreal. And there's the St. Lawrence River that's there. And that river connects to one of the Great Lakes, Lake Ontario, and then goes on the opposite end to the ocean. And that's a lake that I've been connected with my whole life. I've always gone to the lake when I was young. And I'm 30 years old now. And just within the short time that I've been alive, I've seen so much changes. There used to be a lot of natural life you would see turtles on the different bike paths. You would see so much life, and you don't see that. I don't ever see it anymore, actually. So I see a lot of changes in that way. One of the significant things of that area is the construction of the seaway. So they constructed the seaway for those big ships to pass and to be able to transport all the different shipping goods. And when they did that, they disrupted the natural flow of the river. They went and dug on land to create this area for these ships to pass through. And there's so many ships that pass through. So there's the pollution from all of the ships. There's the pollution from all of the boats. And you see the waters turning, like they're brown. A lot of the times the water in that area is brown. And it really scares me to see that. I don't like seeing that. I don't like thinking about that kind of change. And because you think about the way a river, either Blake, if you can give me a bit of a heads up when it's time for me to stop talking. Okay, so the way when you see a river, when it naturally flows, when it's natural, it's very cleansing, it's very purifying, it's very healing. It has that flow, that movement, kind of like our own waters as humans. When we have that within us as well, it feels good. As opposed to, when there's like a block, it feels like, oh, there's something in my chest, oh, there's something in my belly. So it's kind of like that with the rivers too. And with this river, there's been that intentional destruction of the water to create a different flow. And now where they created that, the water doesn't flow there. It doesn't flow there. If you watch it, it doesn't flow. It's stagnant. So the water, when it's stagnant like that, it's like it starts to rot. It starts to get sick. So you see that, and you see the life that's there. A lot of the fish there, and of course it would happen to me. I went fishing, and I was catching the fish that had all the bubbles and had the holes in their body, the sick ones. So when that was happening, I'm like, this isn't for nothing. How come when I'm going fishing, I'm catching that right away? So there's just those kind of things. It's unsettling when you think of the destruction of that natural flow of those rivers, and how much of an impact that has on the life there. So those waters, when they start to become stagnant, when they start to rot, then the bacteria starts to go on there. I don't know how many times we're not allowed to enter the water. There's community warnings of not being able to go into the water because it's too polluted. So I think about that every time I see ships go by. Even recreational boats, I started to think about those too as well. So there seems to be a lot that's going on in that way. So what I do is I try to just speak about what I see. I go to different ceremonies, different water walks, attend events like this, and just try to speak up about the things I see, because I was taught that it's important to do that, because if not, then who's gonna? And that's how changes happen, when things are sort of acknowledged. And as they continue to be acknowledged, then they're like, oh, a change can happen. Oh, there's a new way to do things. Oh, that's what's going on. Okay. So it brings that awareness up. It kind of holds it up in that way. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing the story of these waters, and thank you all for sharing these waters that are suffering, but that connect us all. I'm now passing on the word to Jack Fiander again.
Oh, thank you. I think the question was about the waters that are important to the community I'm in and what I'm doing about it. All of the waters are important to me, and they're all part of my community in my mind. And I guess what I do many things, because I believe that I'm successful in protecting the waters if I, can convince just one person at a time. I'm successful. So one of the things I do is, in my culture, is I start by referring to the waters by their names as if they're humans. I'm near the saltwater. That's called Gulch. The freshwater rivers are the Stulak, and the big river is Chiwana. And then people ask you about that, what that means, and you start explaining to them that they're part of the same organization or organism as we are. You know, um, we all climbed out of the sea 60 million years ago, so um, everything in the water is related to us. We share a lot of the same DNA as us, and sometimes just to emphasize, that the rivers and streams are living things. Um, I show them something from the water under the microscope so they can see all the creatures that are in there, that are alive, that are so tiny you can't see them, but they are related to you. Some of them look like you. They look like the things that you eat, but they're just very tiny. And explain how everything we do affects them. I focus mainly on concerns of the living rivers that are caused by the dams, which, I suppose they're beneficial to agriculture and to generating electricity. But even just the concept of a dam warms the water a little bit behind it, because it slows it. And these species that I show them on the microscope are affected by that, slight increases in temperature. I'm in a region where one half of the state is moist, it's on the ocean, and the other half is a desert. Um, some of the things I do talking about agriculture is, you know, big agriculture and small agriculture. Really, you're supposed to have some kind of permits or, to use water, but there's not much enforcement, and it's kind of politically unpopular for officials to enforce against agriculture. So sometimes me and my posse will go out in a little stream and walk all along it, and we'll realize and we'll take photographs that, oh, practically every field or farm has a hose sticking in the stream to pump out water onto the land. And so we report that, like, because most of them are illegal. They don't have a permit, they just take it. And that's embedded in, Western American culture. Nature is there for the taking. It's only valuable for property, um, things like that. One thing we have a lot of problems with is that um, in many areas, the water in the streams, they're connected to the water under the land. The surface groundwater is connected to the river. And so here in state of Washington, you have to be licensed to be a well driller, and you have to get a permit to drill a well. But there are many, many times what happens is for the farming, which is a big industry here, many people come in from like Idaho that's not regulated from Washington, and they'll plunk down a well, overnight, that's connected to the river, and lowers it. Things like that, I guess, concern me. And um, um, another concern I have with the rivers is many of the highways, the railroad tracks, the communities settled along these rivers. And the river used to naturally flow and meander and have little estuaries and beside it that were flooded so that those species could thrive there. But nowadays, even the state highway department and private people put stuff along the stream to keep it from wandering naturally like it does during its life. They call it riprap. It's kind of like trying to contain the river to this little channel, which creates a problem because that creates it. It compresses this natural flowing river into like this channel of extreme velocity. And that creates a concern for our tribal people who depend on like salmon and other species from the river. Sometimes the river gets compressed so fast and so much velocity that they can't make it. You know what it's like trying to swim against the current. It's it's very difficult for them to reach their spawning areas, especially if the river is channeled through these little pipes or culverts, you know, that might be 8 foot around. It's like creating a speed thing that they don't have the strength to get through, you know, to where they're trying to get to. So I guess it's all important to me. And I know my time is up, but those are some of the things I focus on. And if you want to share a funny story, I also work on the reservation, on the Yakama reservation. And what went on a few years ago, because some of these little streams would dry up right away during the summer. Well, the tribe started bringing in beavers because they make little dams that keep the water flowing all year round. But then the Bureau of Indian Affairs would come in and kick them out because it would cause flooding of the roads and stuff. And so we had two different governments. One was bringing in the beavers to keep the water flowing, and the other one was against that and take them out because they thought like, well, you know, you're damaging the roads. So just a story. That's what I do.
Well, thank you for sharing the story of the water, what you do, and even adding that little piece about our relatives, the beavers. So thank you, Jack. Passing it on to Chandler.
Hi, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is Chandler. I am based in Salt Lake City, the eastern capital of the Great Basin. Today, I'm coming to you from the other side of the Great Basin in eastern Nevada. I started my work in water activism with the Great Salt Lake, so I will start there. I'm lucky to follow Milo, who laid it out so poetically. But a few things I just wanted to add. So the Great Salt Lake is interesting because we don't drink the water from the lake. It's a saline ecosystem, so it's very salty. And most people, in fact, in Utah don't even have a relationship with the lake. That's changed now, but I grew up in Salt Lake City, and it wasn't really a water body that we ever thought of. Part of the issue now, I don't know how many of you have seen in the news, but the Great Salt Lake, as it evaporates due to excessive human diversions, like Milo said, climate change, warming temperatures, agriculture, industry. It's a very shallow lake. So losing just a little bit of elevation reveals vast amounts of the lake's bed. And the lake has been collecting toxic chemicals, runoff from agriculture. Utah has naturally high levels of arsenic in our soils. So the lake has been collecting all of this for a very long time. And so as it dries up, the lake bed is revealed and the wind picks up the dust and blows it into the city. And so there's been a lot of cries. The New York Times called it a toxic dust bowl. So it's been really interesting because even folks who may not see or understand the relationship with water right away can understand this very tangible public health threat. So that is originally what brought me into the fight. A couple of friends and I just saw the news of the toxic dust bowl and thought, oh my God, we have to do something. No one's talking about this at the level that they should be. So we just got together and tried to raise awareness any way that we could. This was in the fall of 2021. And, like the panelists before me have said, just telling people, going around and educating people about what was happening and how they could get involved. So we really tried to serve as a bridge, still try to serve as a bridge for people between, what's happening, how can we empower people with the information and then the tools to make their voices heard. So the legislative session is our focus for the most part here in Utah. And so we try to just break down, what's happening at the policy level for people. When are there opportunities to get involved? And it has just been amazing to see the community coming together around this and getting involved. One thing I do want to mention, Milo talked about U.S. Magnesium, who's this famously destructive mining industry out at the lake. And they had proposed last fall to, because they could not reach the water, the lake had gotten so low, they couldn't reach the water to continue extracting. Was it I forget the number. Is it 1,000 gallons a minute out of Great Salt Lake? Something like that, something ridiculous, which when you think about, like, here we are doing all of this activism to try and save the lake, even our leadership is saying they want to save the lake and taking actions, and then you have this industry over here with the green light to just draw water out. So they had filed a petition or a proposal to take more water out of the lake. Long story short, we thought it was a done deal, but we rallied the community together. We had over 800 people submit public comments to the state, over 150 people show up and speak in a hearing. And ultimately that decision was denied, which honestly was a huge shock to me. So I think that just speaks to the type of work, that we're trying to do to protect our water. I think we need to people just don't think about water, it's an afterthought. And so it's like, how can we bring this to the forefront for people and then empower them with the tools to get involved? So I'm still involved with the Great Salt Lake work. But I've also taken a role with a group called the Great Basin Water Network. So zooming out a little bit to working on issues in Nevada and Utah, the nation's two driest states. And it's very similar. I'm still focused on Great Salt Lake, but we're also focused on groundwater. I appreciate Jack's shout out to groundwater, because honestly, before taking this role, groundwater is not something I really think about. And we are just extracting it at ridiculous rates, these aquifers that cannot be replenished in our lifetimes. And I think because it's below ground, it's really not something that people think about. So we're engaged in a number of fights around the Great Basin. We also are looking at the Colorado River, which 40 million people rely on here in the West. And it's lost about 20% of its flows due to climate change. And yet folks are still trying to stick more straws into it and get as much water as they can. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for sharing everything. And now it leads perfectly into the next question.
So our next question is, globally, water is threatened. From the Arctic Ocean to the blood that flows through our veins, the water that sustains us is laced with a toxic cocktail of chemicals and microplastics. Entire continents are suffering deepening droughts, and a warming atmosphere is sucking the humidity out of forests, laying the groundwork for devastating fires. Then come the atmospheric rivers. The excess humidity in the atmosphere has been inundating human communities and weakening entire ecosystems. In the face of this changing reality, the extractivist economy has gone into overdrive with pipelines, mines, and other death projects proliferating. From lakes that are being sucked dry by industry, rivers that have been dammed to power our energy addiction, and the water that is being used to cool the mega computers that are allowing us all to have this conversation, there is a mad race to privatize water and use them to sustain the collapsing system.
So, in the light of this reality, what would you, amazing panelists, tell someone that believes water is nothing more than a commodity? So this is a very big question, and I'm going to actually pass it along in a different order. And this time, I'm going to start with Milo.
Yeah. What would I tell someone that believes water is nothing more than a commodity? Yeah, I mean, I feel like I could say this hits close to home for me because Great Salt Lake is such a commodity, but like it's not personal. It's like every one of every person on this call, I think, could say the same thing about water near them. And that just like breaks my heart a little bit. I just have to like sit with that for a second and like mourn that gap, that like where I I think like where I like envision us, and like where we're at, and like this like in this valley that I live in, how recently all of the development and extraction, how recently that's happened, that a lot of that wasn't there, like a lifetime ago. And I think like being with that grief and allowing it to, I don't know, uh, I think a lot about this, this idea of a love so robust it refuses to look away. Because like Chandler said in Salt Lake, there's this massive ancient being that lives, you know, just north of these big cities, and it has become a place to just completely throw things away. There are landfills, there are prisons, there are mines, there are, you know, it's just like atrocity after atrocity after atrocity. And creating, like, that's how you create a culture of disdain. And when you have a culture that looks away from what is happening, and I hear that a lot in the conversation that's already been happening, is because most of our work here today is telling people what is happening to reorient, to this crisis. And you know, for the people that think this is just a commodity, like that really, it's like kind of this easy way out, because it's I don't know if we're allowed to swear in this. I'm like about to swear. It's like really hard to look at what is happening. It is, you know, you know, like in a certain lens, it is devastation, like as far as the eye can see. And, you know, that's not all of it. Certainly, that is not all of it. But I think like what I'm interested is like in is developing this capacity to have this love that is so robust that it refuses to look away. And that love feels so centered in relationship, at least for me, right? And so like that's where my work has been in creating spaces for people to be in like long-term relationship with the lake and with the water bodies in this region, and not only to be in long-term relationship with the lake, but to be in like intimate relationship with each other, and even more so to be in relationship with each other in, like in my case, in this case, in a lake facing way, like being in relationship and doing that, like, you know, I'm thinking about, I like making art with the lake, and writing poetry about the lake, and having that like lead to meeting people who are interested in the lake, and going on a bike ride to trace the Bear River, the largest tributary into Great Salt Lake. We rode our bikes tracing the body of the river with our bodies for 300 miles in 7 days. And on that bike ride, we decided we wanted to bring the community out to the lake. And so we started doing community bike rides once a month on the full moon, to ride out to the lake and be together, to be in a part of the city that we've never been before, that is riddled with, right? If there wasn't a prison and a humongous inland industrial port in the way, we'd be able to get to the lake in 15 minutes. But instead, we have to, you know, make our way through. And here we are, 10 people, a lot of people who have never been to the lake before, watching the sunset and the moon rise on their bikes, like being empowered to like get out there before, like so many people. I've never been here before. I didn't know that there was a bike path all the way from Salt Lake City through the airport where you can watch airplanes fly right over your head and then be at, one of the most beautiful sunsets I've ever seen. So yeah, thank you. I'll leave it there.
I'll take so much from your words, Milo. I love so robust that you can't look away. Thank you. Thank you for that. Passing the word on to Jack.
Oh, okay. Well, I work in the legal area, and I've and and I'm tribal, and I work for tribes. And what I've tried successfully to do for many years, is change the law, because the law about water law in the United States um, is, comes from mainly from England, and the law is that um, you have the right to take water from a stream, a river, the ground, whatever. You have that right by taking it out and putting it to your own use. That's the superior right. So it encourages people to use more water, because the more you use and the earlier you use it, you have more rights. And that's just wrong. I've been trying to flip it so it's to say um, different cultures have different laws. And this started out many years ago in a agricultural place called the Yakama Valley. There was a drought. So there was this big adjudication court case to determine everybody's water rights. So everybody along the streams had to claim a water right as to when they used it and when they took it out of the water, and when they used it and put it on their field. But I happen to represent an old man, an old tribal man who lived along one of the streams, and he wanted to claim a water right. But he wanted to claim a water right and get it recognized. He said, Jack, that stream runs in through my property, and I use it because I have a sweat lodge that I use. And when I'm done, I go jump in the stream to rinse out. That purifies me. I need the water there. And he said, elk and deer come and drink from that stream in front of my house, and I get to watch them, and it serves them. And he said, and just having that water flowing through there where I can see it gives me peace of mind, because I know it's there. So he was trying to claim a right not to take water out of the stream. He was trying to get a right recognized to keep water in the stream, because that was his culture. But the law doesn't recognize that. So any right to have water in the stream, the right is to take water out of it. That's the only way to have a legal right. He had no legal right to keep water in his stream. And we tried it, and it wasn't recognized, because that was really against all the law of water that was out there. So we ended up having to prove that he had an in garden on his property in 1855. So he had a water right, but it was a water right to take the water out of the stream, and that's not what he wanted. So that's one of the things I focus on in the legal area is water law in America, and probably elsewhere, it's just wrong. You only have a right to water if you use it and take it, like the commodity, like you say, and that's just wrong. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Jack. Everything, all of your vast experience. And now turning over the word to Crystal.
Oh, thank you so much. I remember a time when we didn't buy water, right? Like, you buy water from a bottle because you're afraid of what you're drinking. But, I'm kind of dealing with this now. I just learned yesterday with one of our treaties, we're trying to use a treaty to fight the pipeline. And what I've noticed is many landowners have become nervous when indigenous people here on the East Coast talk about land and fishing rights. And I kind of want to talk or touch on what Jack mentioned about the water rights. And it's the mindset of the government and the landowners that this is a commodity and they own everything and they own the minerals and all these rights. There was a case in 1996, the Virginia Supreme Court. It was called Craft versus Burr, and it was a crown grant issued by King George II in 1750. And our treaty is the Treaty of Middle Plantation, which happened in the 1700s as well. And this crown grant gave 4 landowners along the Jackson River the right to prohibit fishing in the waters flowing over their land. And it just so happened that in 1996, there was a man who was fishing on the river, and some of the homeowners had put up, "You're trespassing on our land," and we knew that the rivers were public for public use. And the police were called, and the man was arrested for trespassing, and it went to the court. So he went to the attorney general, and then he went to another agency, the Fish and Wildlife, and they went to court about it. And the Fish and Wildlife and the government was like, "This is a personal private case. We can't help you." And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the property owners that they own the rights to that water. And it just blows my mind that, one, that the Supreme Court of Virginia is now giving people the right to own a piece of water, right? A freeway that we were able to use back and forth. But it just raises concerns, especially among recreational people, recreational users of the water, about these recreational fishing rights. But also, it kind of gives me an idea that if they're going to use these treaties that the United States did not recognize, not the treaties, the crown grants that they recognize in Virginia, why are they not using these treaties that they don't recognize for us? Because they'll say, "Oh, it was made with the King and Queen of England," right? So now I'm just like, this is a good idea. I'm going to, propose that we do this to try to stop this pipeline that's coming through, because these pipelines are going to contaminate our water, and they're going to expose harmful pollutants into the air. I learned this from my matriarch elders, grandmother Casey Camp, grandmother Mary Lyons, Sharon Day, and my aunt Pure Faye. We talk about the rights of nature as if it is a separate thing from us, but we have to take the moment to recognize the interconnectedness to all things, right? So when I hear people talk about water as a commodity, I know that they're disconnected from their spirit. And the truth and reality is, this water is what the human body is made of. And so when they talk about water as a commodity, they're so disconnected from their spirit. We're born in water. Water, we're made of water. Water is a part of us. And, right now in this time of imbalance, I've seen a lot of humans, they've gotten into their egos, right? And, they're just not listening to the natural world, what it's saying to us, right? They're just ignoring it. And we really have to pay back to the earth herself what she has gifted to us. We have to take responsibility today. So, yeah, thank you.
We have to take responsibility today. Thank you. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you all. And passing on this beautiful river of thoughts and words and actions onto Chandler.
Thank you. The first thing I would say to somebody that thought water is a commodity is go sit by the water for like 10 minutes and listen to the water. I think we can feel so much that way. But I loved your phrasing of death projects in the question, because I really do view it that way. Like, water is the source of all life on Earth, and we don't treat it that way. We depend on it for our survival, but we just expect it to be there every time we turn on the taps. Water is not a commodity, it's our relative. And so if it's our relative, what does that relationship need to look like? How do we treat our relatives, and how can we reorient ourselves to be in better relationship with water? And I think that's where, the rights of nature movement comes in. I think here in the West, we see a lot of commoditization of water, because scarcity, is our water issue more than like pollution and things like that. So water really is our most precious commodity, even financially, in a lot of ways. And we're seeing that play out through some really difficult tensions that I want to call attention to, just some of these forms of commoditization. So our organization, the Great Basin Water Network, started 30 years ago. It was a group of people that came together to fight the Las Vegas pipeline fight, which was the city of Las Vegas wanting to pipe water out of rural eastern Nevada, taking water from rural communities, from tribes, to feed sprawl in Las Vegas. And so I don't think people always, would see that case and think of that as like, oh, they're treating water like a commodity. But like, we do have to think about the growth of our cities when we're fighting another fight that's very similar in Cedar City, Utah, where Cedar City is trying to pipe water out of some of these rural valleys, taking water that is owned by the Paiute Band, the Indian Peaks of Paiute Band there, and also is water that's, feeding these rural communities to feed their growing cities. And so it's like, it's just a really difficult tension. And then we're seeing water, privatization in a very literal sense. So some of the things that we're tracking as an organization in Nevada, especially, there are these groups coming in that literally just buy water rights and sell them to make a profit. So I think we're seeing more and more of that. It's easier to do in places like Nevada where folks aren't paying attention. But I think, especially here in the West, as the threats of climate change increase, we're going to see that more and more. So I think helping people understand what the commoditization looks like, and then also how to reorient. Like, I think because there are all these forms, we do have to have this higher conversation. And so I'm so glad that you guys are doing this today. I also think, like, there, in a way, agriculture is a commoditization of water. I think folks, I don't know if you're familiar, but here in the West, alfalfa gets a lot of the rap. 80% of our water here along the Colorado River on Great Salt Lake is going to feed alfalfa, beef, big dairy, things like that, these commodity industries. And the only reason that that's profitable is because these farmers are getting the water for free. I do want to say, I think we need to tread lightly with this conversation of agriculture. I think we can't demonize the farmers. I believe it was Jack who said earlier, it's the regulators that we really need to blame for not enforcing this stuff. But we are seeing this in a lot of different ways. Despite all of that, I think, I am still hopeful that as we help people understand that, water is life, water is our relative, we need to have a strong relationship. We can move beyond some of the, political divides that we see today, just because it is like our most fundamental resource. So I'll stop there.
Perfect. Thank you. And now, just to end this round of answers, Kahté, raks.
Oh, I guess when I think of, sorry, my chair's a little squeaky. When I think of this question, think of how I know for myself, when I started making changes, I was inspired by other people to make positive and healthy changes in my life and to do things in a different way. I don't know if I would have been able to fully be told to do something in a different way. It came from watching other people live in a way that's connected with their spirit and walking in a beautiful way. And it inspired me to want to do those things and live that way too. So that's how I started to make different changes in my own life, was by watching others and seeing that it's very contagious. Those kind of things. I never used to think about the things I think about today. I would just be using disposable plastics, not thinking much about them. Now I make different efforts to bring my own reusable coffee cup, to recycle, to not take super long showers, not just go for cruises for no reason. Like, I started to make these little changes, which at first the thought of was overwhelming. I was having a breakdown when I was starting to learn about these things and really starting to wake up and starting to see just how powerful my existence is and how impactful every step I take has on creation. And as I'd done my own healing, I was able to live in a way, and I still try every day to live in a way that's respectful and kind. And what Crystal said about when people are sort of disconnected from their spirits and not I don't know exactly how you said it, Crystal. You said do you know what part I'm talking about? Could you just repeat that one more time?
Yeah, they're just disconnected from their spirits. Their egos have gotten in their way, and they are not connected to the land and to the water like they should be.
And that's what I think about in my own life before I'd done my healing, how I never, considered my actions. And as I started, my own healing, I started to have more consideration and in the way that I walk. And I try to do that today. So I think sometimes leading by example has a big impact on other people changing. When you lead by example and you live in that way and you walk in that way and you carry yourself in that way, that it's very contagious and can have a lot of impact on other people who come into contact with you. I've only got to, other people inspired me to make changes when I seen people carrying their disposable cups, when I heard my friend talk about how adamant she is for recycling, when I hear other people talk about, water conservation, and that could only happen. I could only kind of pick up that extra work and make those extra things as I did my own healing in my own life. Whereas before, I wouldn't have been there, wouldn't have been able to hear, see, or understand any of that. So I think the water's health and our health, it's very connected. And it's very, very connected. It's almost like a reflection of us. So I think as the people do their healing, it'll be reflected in the water. Those things that impact the water, like greed, those things that impact the water, like addiction to power and addiction to money, it's almost like we can't be influenced as much by those energies when we do our own healing, because we're connected to our own spirits. We're not going to be so easily influenced by those kind of other energies like greed and power and addiction when we're connected to ourselves. And when you connect to yourself, it's easy to connect to the water. It's easy to hear the water. There's different levels and abilities of connecting to the water, and it's really beautiful. It could be a very beautiful thing. And I think about that, and I go sing to those waters too. I go sing to them and I go talk to them, and I think about them and the different the water beings, the water spirits that are in those waters, because it's not just about us, it's about all those fish too. It's about everything that relies on that. And we're all here as humans, but there's so many others, that are behind us in that way that are impacted as well. And I think of them too. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for guiding us and finalizing this round of questions, this round of answers. focusing on the aspect of healing and being who you are and through that teaching. So thank you. Thank you. And then perfect segue into the next question.
So around the world, communities are reacting to the climate crisis by acknowledging the personhood of water and their more than human relatives. This has taken the form of the Rights of Nature movement, which attempts to enshrine the legally enforceable rights of the more than human world.
So, what role do you all think that Rights of Nature can play in protecting the water to sustain us all? Globally, what rights should water and their more than human relatives have? So, this is another huge question. And you all sit with it for a little bit, but first we'll pass the word on to Chen.
I love it. Thank you, guys. Huge question, like you said. We have, thanks to, being introduced to you guys, been inspired by the Rights of Nature movement in our work with Great Salt Lake. And something that we always say is that the lake has the right to exist, flourish, be restored. It has the right to a healthy elevation that will support a flourishing ecosystem. Something we talk about now with the Colorado River is that it has the right to flow to its natural endpoint. I will say in practice, like the Rights of Nature work has been pretty complicated for us. So when we got started, the genesis of it all is we had spent our first legislative session fighting like hell for pennies, basically. We, turned out as many people as we could, and our Utah legislature did almost nothing to save the lake. And so we were just like, well, what if we were to fight for what we actually wanted? What would that look like? And that's how we came to the Rights of Nature movement. So we started exploring what rights for Great Salt Lake would look like and talking to different groups, and started to do some organizing around it. We had a big event, really using the Rights of Nature as a narrative tool, an education tool. So talking like we have been today about how do we reorient ourselves and come into right relationship with nature? If these bodies of water do have a right to exist, then how do we need to change our systems, our habits, to allow that to happen? So we did have an event and had some of our community members create a preamble and ultimately have written a rights for Great Salt Lake resolution that we are going to, shop around to local municipalities. The hope being that, these small cities will adopt it. Ultimately, Salt Lake City would adopt it. We could take it to the legislature. Our challenge is we're working in a really conservative context. Utah is a very red state, and we don't have a lot of time. So scientists have said, Great Salt Lake has 5 years until it dries up. People argue about how much time we actually have. I don't know that it matters. We have to act quickly. And this Rights of Nature work, takes a lot of time. Like we're talking about changing systems, changing how we see ourselves as beings in our watersheds. So it's been a little bit of a struggle because we believe, in our heart of hearts that like the Rights of Nature work is the most important, but like in practice, we do need to do whatever it's going to take to get water to the lake. And right now our leadership's not going to listen to the Rights of Nature conversation. So that's been a challenge, but we have worked really hard to keep that at the forefront as we are organizing and speaking to our community, because ultimately, I forget who it was that put it like this, but like we have all of these environmental fights, and I'm seeing this now with the new role that I'm in with the Great Basin Water Network is like, oh, someone proposes a bad project here, over here. And so we file a protest, we sue, whatever it takes. And it's just like, this is going to be a treadmill, or like we're playing whack-a-mole with all of these projects until we have this larger shift of Rights of Nature. So, I do think we need to keep it at the forefront. And bring in this level of like spirituality into all these conversations. It's not just like, oh, around the next bend, we're going to win this lawsuit and it'll be over. It's like, unless we have a shift as large as Rights of Nature, I don't think, I think that's what it's going to take. But yeah, it has been challenging. I'm still hopeful though. I think, we see wins all across the world, more and more in the United States, thanks to the work of many of the people I'm here with today. But I will say, yeah, for our conservative community, it's been a little tough.
But thank you for sharing, despite all the obstacles in your path. Thank you for sharing your hope. And now passing the word on to Crystal.
Oh, thank you so much. You give me a little bit of time to think about this. So, like I said before, we need to align human law with natural law. I believe that the rights of nature movement is pushing local, national, and especially international authorities to recognize these natural features, giving them legal personhood or the independent right to flourish. But I look at the Wanganui River, and I apologize if I mispronounced that. That river was given rights as an independent entity, because they considered it an indivisible source from like the river to the sea, and that was part of their treaty settlement between the government and the Maori people. And the guardians were appointed to speak and act on behalf of the river and enforce its rights. But we really need real transformational power, and we have to change people's minds in the way we think, like all of us as a whole. And then we have to hold people accountable, corporations, governments. There was this one law professor, his name was David Boyd, and I think he was from Canada, or he worked in Canada. He said in an interview once that legal personhood could succeed where decades of environmental laws have failed, which would kickstart a cultural shift. So we really need a cultural shift away from conceiving nature as a warehouse of commodities for human use. So it is a system, like we really have to change people's minds about the rights of nature. And I really do believe it's an education. And like Chandler, we in North Carolina, we're a very red state. But again, you have to come to people on a human level and say, this is not what divides us. This is what sustains us. So yeah, thank you.
This is what sustains us, uniting us all. Thank you for uniting all of those ideas, Crystal. And now passing the word on to Kahté.
Sorry, could you read me the question one more time?
Of course, very big question. So what role do you think that rights of nature can play in protecting the waters that sustain us all? Globally, what rights should water have?
Sorry, I don't know why it's not coming to me anymore. All day I was thinking all kinds of things, and now I'm here. I'm like, why is it blank?
You want us to go to someone else, we can come back to you.
Okay, yes, thank you.
I'm going to pass the word on then to Milo.
Thank you. Yeah, what role can rights of nature play in protecting the waters, and what rights should nature have? Yeah, so Chandler kind of went into kind of like the local Great Salt Lake rights of nature situation. And I feel like threads that I'm picking up on in this conversation are like pointing towards this like shift in consciousness, which I feel like is where I want to take this, because it feels like materially and like in the law and all of that, we have like the rights of nature, and I feel like I want to point to like the underlying principles of yeah, I feel like getting into like a community understanding of what the underlying principles of rights of nature are. And I guess I'll just name what I think those are because I'm not sure if they've been named on this call yet. And this also isn't my domain, so other folks that are in this more, please feel free to chime in. But like thinking about rights of nature, like I think about like interdependence and kinship and relationship, like all my relations, and that with these ideas of connection, like, yeah, going and sitting next to the water for 10 minutes. And like, and then like to bring in this other piece that like when, like I've noticed like when I start to work on myself and I hear this with other panelists that, it's easier to hear the water. And then it, you know, like, and then it becomes easier to hear ourselves. And like in my experience, that's created a kind of flow. And like with what's happening with the river and it's stagnant and it's not flowing and it's dying, and the water is dying. Like thinking about the need to get that flowing in ourselves too, and how blocked that is. And like I'm like off on a tangent now, but I just like want to pick up this thread of the community healing, and that as we can flow, and if we can flow through our tears and like bringing back this love so robust it refuses to look away. Like I was at a gratitude ceremony for Great Salt Lake on Saturday. And a big takeaway was it's our salt water that is going to bring the water back to Great Salt Lake. And I think like that is true for all of us. And our salt water, our tears and our blood, right? Like this water that is inside us that comes from the sea, as Jack was pointing to earlier. That deep interconnection. I think it's so possible, that community healing, and like, yeah, those relationships. And like, I think the waters are asking that of us. And I think that like Great Salt Lake can hear like more people like facing them and orienting towards them. And I guess I just like want to uplift that like I don't know much about anything, but I do really feel that love at the center, and that is something different, and that we have to do something different because what we've been, there's not a lot of models. And yeah, I'm not really talking about rights of nature anymore, but there's my soapbox about relationship and love. And I think that all of that could like help us get to rights of nature, like in our red states actually happening or something.
Oh, so many beautiful connections. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing, Milo. Can we turn back to?
Okay, I'm ready. Okay, there's some things that I was thinking about when it comes to this important question. I've had the pleasure, that I got to listen to different elders, different knowledge keepers, and from different areas too. Some places back home, other places I'm in Ojibwe territory, so I get to hear them too. And there's different messages. No, they're pretty much all the same message, really. All across nations, we have a lot of like the same message, like literally, like, and it's pretty cool. And some of the things I remember hearing is the idea and the understanding of, not taking more than you need. So I think about how we have these kind of old laws and old knowledge and ways of living and kind of governing ourselves in regards to respect and the continuation of creation and the continuation of health. And one of those I hear often is, not to take more than you need, and how that way of living has some really positive implications. So I've been thinking about that quite a bit recently. Is okay, do I really need this? Do I really need that? How much do I really need? And it can help to be very appreciative of what we do have. And so I think about that a lot. Is, how much am I taking? Do I really need to go and take and take and take? Sometimes I hear stories of people going and hunting, and they go to this one area and they kill, like they overhunt. They go and they kill 12 moose from one spot, and that disrupts the populations and the life cycles. There's a bit of an excitement that can happen when people are doing that, and sometimes they might not be aware, and maybe they weren't taught, or they don't have that awareness. And they might go and they kill and they take everything. And they don't know that by killing those female moose and those females, that they then go on to affect those populations of animals in the area, that now those moose, they're not going to be able, those cows are not going to be able to reproduce and recreate, and you've disrupted their life cycles. It's the same thing with the fish too, with going and taking more than I need with the fish. Am I going to go and take as much as I need? Because with that greed too, right? It just takes and takes and takes and takes. Same with so many other things. So I think of, what I've heard talked about as those natural laws, those cosmic laws, and in how those talk about protections, even with medicines. If I'm going to go take medicines, I don't go pick all the medicine in that whole patch. I pick a certain percent so that I can maintain that growth, and so that those medicines can continue to be there. Same thing with the wild rice. When I go take the wild rice, I don't go take everything. There's some that goes back into the water so it can continue to grow. So there's these different kind of laws already that we've had for so long, that are communicated from the elders, and that are, taught to us. And it's about our way of thinking. Do I really need this? Do I need to go and take all those moose? That's kind of more than I need, and I don't really need to go and take all of that. Do I really need to go take all that fish? It's kind of more than I need. So what is it, what is it that I actually need for my survival? Because those things, they're all that life, it's given to us as a gift. It's taught that it's a gift that's given to us, like the water's a gift that's given to us, the animals, the different medicines, and those gifts can be taken away if we take more than we need. Then it's like we're not respecting. So I think about those things, and also just what Milo talked about with the gratitude, and how powerful that gratitude is, and how much it can affect the way of thinking when we're grateful for what we have. And I think about those things, and I think all these things I just talked about, they're about laws, they're about governing, they're about rights, they're about balance, they're about respect, they're about truth, they're about honesty, and it's important, I think, these kind of understandings, because they talk about, those gifts that we have. We're so lucky where we are. I know I'm really lucky where I am. Well, just in Canada and this part of the world, to be able to have water, to be able to have food, and there's so many places that don't have that, and we have that right now. And we're so lucky in this part of the world to have that, because some places they really don't. And I can't imagine, not having that, not being able to drink water, not being able to have any food, and having little ones and children and things like that, and all the stuff that comes with that. So I think of those natural laws, those things that we've been taught, those messages that those old people are still communicating in the way of living, and how powerful that gratitude is as well, to really pull in all those gifts and understand what we have, because it doesn't come from a place of lacking that gratitude. It comes from, that place of appreciating. So that mindset of gratitude has that power to uplift and to really bring appreciation. So I'm not going to have to go kill 12 moose. I'll be happy with the 1 or 2 that I have and that I need. So I think of that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing a little bit more about this balance, this deep balance that is at the heart of all this, the act of communicating, the art of joining our hearts into one. And with that said, turning to the last person of the night, the last voice of the night, which will be Jack. And I think you're muted, Jack, so sorry.
Well, Blake and Simpson, I guess I'm going to try a different approach, because I agree with Crystal that we're running out of time. As far as the rights of nature, um, there's it's too ingrained in the American culture. Our leaders, most of whom are sort of out of central casting, with the white hair and the blue suit and 60 plus, that grew up with that attitude of what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine. Uh, if you talk to the youths, the children, 16, 12 and under, you talk about right of nature, they get it. They get it. They're going to have to live with the consequences of this world being on fire. But they're not going to be in leadership positions for, 30, 40 years. And it's going to be too late the way we're depleting everything and using up the water and damaging the earth. And I've tried using science, about the rights of nature and explanations like, well, we ought to sort of recognize rights of nature, We have an Endangered Species Act where we protect the species and et cetera. But still, I'm near Seattle, very liberal, very progressive, very open-minded. Still, when I talk about rights of nature to people, often it's like you're talking about an idea that came to you at midnight with tinfoil on your head from outer space. They don't understand or accept it. So in the future, because we have to pick up the people that are sort of opposed to that or not open to that. So in the future, I'm going to try a different approach because, yeah, our youths get it, but we don't have time for them to get up here and make these changes. So I'm going to take a different approach because a lot of our opponents, um, they like kind of cherry pick stuff out of the Bible and what Jesus said as justification for, taking things and using things and putting it to our use. But, you know, there's cherry pick. There's good stuff in there about nature that God said and that Jesus said and that's in the Bible. And I'm going to start using those, because the Pope is with us now. This guy, Pope Francis, he's all about the rights of nature and stuff like that. So I'm going to start trying to pick up these opponents by explaining to them that, oh, this is what it says in Christianity about how we should treat others and nature and like ourselves, just like the original Saint Francis that this guy's named after, or try to convince them that when you recognize rights of nature, our resources are going to last longer. It's going to be to your economic benefit because you'll be able to exploit them over a longer period of time. Don't do it all at once. Whatever it takes to get us there. As a lawyer, you deal with the art of persuasion. You try to persuade people to your side, juries or whatever. And I don't get anywhere trying to give a good scientific right thing to do explanation. I need to pick up these guys. So I'm going to just try to appeal to them in their language that you should do this because it's good for your benefit, you know, um, or it's consistent with what your God says and your culture, your elders, or something like that. Because we don't have time for our youth to grow up and take it on because they're by the time people truly accept that, probably going to be too late. It's almost too late now with everything that's going on. Our world is different, so I'm going to try to take a more dastardly, tricky approach and try to say, this this is why rights of nature is good for you. It's consistent with everything you believe in. You're going to make more money if you respect nature. You're you're going to be carrying out God's will if you respect nature. I don't know. I'm going to try something different and go in a different direction, I think, because I s- I don't have time for us to be treated like, the hippies back in the day that just, get put on the fringe. We need to find a way to get this into mainstream by speaking their language. So uh, I guess I'm going to go uncover. That's all I got.
Thank you so much for putting a twist on everything, Jack.
Am I muted?
No, we can hear you. We can hear you. For putting a twist on everything and for sharing your perspective.
Okay.
And thank you. And I know that we have some great,
Mhm.
beautiful comments in the Q&A. We won't be able to get to them. There's 3 minutes today. We really want to respect your time. But we are going to just ask each of the amazing people who are on the call with us tonight to at least share one word or one couple of words that gives you hope. What gives you hope? And it can be anything. And I'm actually gonna let you all think a little bit. So I'll start. I'm gonna say something that's a little bit maybe easy, but gives me hope is listening to you all, and to hearing your thoughts and seeing how they all come from different perspectives, but they all connect and unite as one.
And yes, I think similarly to Simpson, what gives me hope is that we're not alone in this fight. We might be miles and miles away across a very vast continent, but we are still all working together to protect what keeps us alive. So that's what gives me hope, because we are not alone. We are all here.
I'm gonna pass the word on to Crystal. What gives you hope?
It's similar like yours. Meetings like this gives me hope. Talking to different people and uniting the fights. It gives me hope.
Passing the word on to Chandler.
Pretty much the same. I was going to say interconnectedness, conversations like this. And I just want to say thank you to you all for pulling us together and tying these threads of all of this. Thank you.
Thank you for joining this tapestry. Thank you, Chandler. Kahté, raks.
The little ones.
Who?
Sorry?
Oh, the little ones give me hope. The little I don't want to say the little people. I don't mean like the little people, but I mean like like the little humans. Like I have nieces and nephews and little ones in my life, and they give me hope. The next generation gives me hope, because I think each generation is bringing different beautiful things. So, and they give me hope, and they give me a bit of motivation too.
Oh, beautiful. The little ones, yes. Give us all hope and light. Jack, what gives you hope? Who gives you hope?
Oh, the young people and the students give me hope because they're the ones that are daring to bring these climate change cases, knowing that they're going to lose or not get traction, but they get it because they're going to inherit this world. Because when I speak to the youth, they're kind of nodding along, like they get it. And a lot of times when I talk to other people, the older the older people, I kind of get like, you know, it. So the youth give me hope.
Thank you, Jack. The last word is yours, Milo. The last.
I really want to repeat most of the things that everyone else has said, but to say something different, what gives me hope is witnessing in my own experience the absolute, like the only way I could describe it is magic that has started happening in my life as I've started deepening my intimacy with Great Salt Lake. Meeting Chandler was part of that, and that gives me hope. Feels like support from places that aren't this third dimension.
Thank you. Thank you all for everything you shared tonight. Thank you all for all the amazing comments that were shared with us. And also thank you to everybody that was joining us tonight, taking a little bit of your time to join this conversation about the water that is uniting us all as we speak, that is flowing through our veins and flowing through the watersheds that are just a part of one larger ecosystem. So thank you all for being what you are tonight. We will be having another virtual event, which will be taking place on the 27th. It is Water Has No Borders, and it is about the Great Lakes watershed. So another Great Lake, a cousin of the Great Salt Lake. So you'll get receiving more information about that. And I hope you all have a beautiful night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.